Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you all had a great week, and I hope you all had a great holiday yesterday. Today, we're jumping into 3 scary Thanksgiving stories. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. My family has always had some long-standing traditions. One of them was going to my grandparents' farm the day before Thanksgiving, and staying through Sunday. Being a farm, they had ready access to animals and produce, and it made getting ready for Thanksgiving easy. Every Thanksgiving, my pop-pop would get up early and pick the biggest turkey on the farm to slaughter for dinner. While he was handling the turkey, Grammy would start making dinner, and she would set out different craft projects for the kids to do throughout the day. It had been tradition since I was a child, and now we were old enough, my nieces and nephews could participate, and it almost made Thanksgiving more exciting. In July of last year, Pop-Pop died of a heart attack, and this was going to be our first Thanksgiving without him. Grammy tried her best to hold everything together, and when the families arrived late Wednesday night, she informed us that she would wake up early and handle Pop-Pop's usual Thanksgiving duty. We all had our concerns. Since he had passed away, things had changed. Grammy was getting a bit forgetful, and there was a few times we caught her talking to herself. There had even been a few times she would call and tell us things that couldn't possibly have happened, like Pop-Pop bringing her wildflowers. Through our protest, she insisted that she would handle the turkey, and if she needed any help, she would let us know. I barely slept at night. My sister and her kids had the room across from me, and my parents next to me. Between snoring and worrying, I spent most of the night tossing and turning. Grammy had gotten so bad in the last few months, I wondered if she'd even remembered us coming over yesterday, or how to make her famous Thanksgiving meal. The last time I checked my phone was about 4:30 in the morning. I guess I had finally relaxed enough to fall asleep, because the next thing I know, it's 7:30 and I hear noises coming from the kitchen. I quickly got dressed, and by the time I made it to the kitchen, I found Grammy shutting the oven door and setting the timer. Skeptical, I asked what she was doing, and she quickly reassured me that she had already handled the turkey, and had just gotten it in the oven. She looked fine, sounded normal, so I decided to just let it go. I helped her set up the crafts for the kids, and we settled into making pie crusts. We had a few hours to ourselves before everyone started waking up, and we were enjoying reminiscing about Pop-Pop. She told me stories I had never even heard before, and I hoped so much that they were real. One by one, the rest of the family came downstairs, and we settled into our different jobs. My niece was crafting away, while my parents looked for the old dinnerware we used every year, and my sister was peeling potatoes. Around 3 o'clock, we noticed my nephew had yet to make an appearance. My niece quickly informed us he had gone outside to play. Dinner was almost done, and we were growing antsy. My sister went out the back door to gather my nephew up and bring him in. After a few minutes, we heard the most bone-chilling scream. My parents and I ran outside to see what was going on, while Grammy sat with my niece. Outside, we found my sister crumpled in a pool of blood, holding my nephew's coat. My mom raced inside to call the police, while my dad comforted my sister. I started searching the farm and going from building to building looking for him. The police arrived within minutes and gathered us in the kitchen. They sat us down one by one, asking us when we had last seen my nephew, and we took turns comforting my sister and keeping my niece entertained and distracted. The police took the most recent pictures we could find of him, and reassured us they had units canvassing the area for him. About an hour after the police arrived, the timer for the turkey went off. It was a reminder that my nephew wasn't with us. Even as amazing as the turkey smelled, Grammy seemed entranced and quickly made her way to the oven, with most of us ignoring her, and trying to ignore the mouth-watering scent in the air. We didn't want to eat until my nephew was home safe. It wasn't until she turned around we all stopped and stared. The police say my nephew must have woken up early when he heard Grammy in the kitchen, and then decided to go out and play. Grammy's mental state had deteriorated much more than we feared, and with his brown jacket, she must have mistaken him for the turkey. We found what was left of his head in the pig trough. It wasn't uncommon for my grandparents to throw bones and stuff to the pigs, because they eat everything. Grammy never understood what happened. Even when she was found not guilty by reason of insanity, they put her in a high-security mental health facility. My sister hasn't been the same since, and I can't blame her. I know that was our last Thanksgiving as a family. This may sound horrible, and I feel horrible, but I don't think there was ever a turkey that smelled as good as he did, and that thought in itself is enough to make me never want to celebrate again. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Or at least it would be. After all, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving anymore. On this day of festivity and cheer leading directly to the holiday season, you must find it difficult to believe that any American individual could truly find the day unfavorable. I mean, what kind of absolute grump would fault a day of giving thanks and eating merrily? Me. And I have a damn good reason too as well. Don't get me wrong, the day itself isn't necessarily contemptible by default. Honestly, the concept of Thanksgiving is a great one, and for most families through the United States, I'm sure that it is very well executed. For me, though, it stands as a reminder of that horrific dinner that my family and I were subjected to last year. Well, unless I tell this little yarn, I suppose that no matter what I say about the holiday from henceforth would be automatically discarded as ridiculous, unpatriotic garbage. Once again, I reiterate that I'm a proud American, and the only reason I find Thanksgiving the way I do is because of personal experience. With all of that said, let's begin. Last year on this day, my lifelong friend Thomas invited me to his home for Thanksgiving. Now, being a time for familial gathering and all, I found this gesture sweet, but kindly refused in favor of enjoying the holiday with my own family instead. It would appear selfish to my family if I left them to spend the whole day with Thomas. After all, I am a happily married man with 2 kids. I couldn't just leave them on Thanksgiving, even if it was for a good buddy. The thing about Thomas, however, is that he's entirely and completely alone. The guy never got married, never had kids, nothing. Thomas basically lived entirely on his own, inhabiting a small, shaggy apartment a few miles away from my place in the lovely suburbs. Well, he did have a roommate, but his life was essentially compromised of work. Thomas once told me that he must have seen his distant family from another state more often than he had seen his roommate once he moved in. So anyway, when Thomas texted me, asking me to come over to his apartment and join him for some kind of activity, I texted back that I couldn't. It was hours later, right as I was about to carve the turkey, that Thomas responded. I felt the phone buzz in my pocket almost simultaneously as I was cutting into the prepared turkey. I quickly carved the turkey into more delectable slices and handed them out to my wife and 2 daughters. Then, I took out my phone and read the message that Thomas had sent. He had said that, if I wanted, I could bring my whole family over after we were finished eating, and he would treat us all to a movie or something. I found this only slightly odd, as Thomas seemed uncharacteristically pushy, but I shrugged it off and texted back that we would be at his place in less than an hour. True to my word, we scarfed down our Thanksgiving dinner, wrapped ourselves up in our winter clothing, and jumped into the car to head down to Thomas's apartment. When we arrived, Tracy, my young daughter, astutely observed that Thomas's vehicle wasn't parked near his front door. We headed up to the door and knocked, and miraculously, Thomas's hermit of a roommate, Lawrence, opened up the door for us. He glanced over at us as if looking at some donuts on display at a bakery, looked back into the apartment, and told us that Thomas had gone out to get some snacks for us to sneak into the movies. For a few moments, we just stood silently on the front mat as Lawrence shifted back and forth in the doorframe, clearly uncomfortable. After a good 15 seconds, Lawrence opened the door wider and invited us in to wait for Thomas. As per usual, the main room of the apartment was an absolute shambles. Dirty clothes littered the floor that surrounded the seedy couch, and the television had visible cracks along the edges of the screen. Most of that mess was likely due to Thomas. My family and I warily sat down on the worn couch as Lawrence scuttled into the kitchen nearby, if you could call it that. After a few minutes, Lawrence came back out and told us that Thomas had texted him and asked to drop us off at the movie theater. Initially, I attempted to politely refuse, claiming that we were perfectly capable of driving ourselves to the theater to meet Thomas there. Lawrence kept insisting that he was just doing what Thomas had told him to do, and even showed us the text. So I just decided to go along with it. Thomas was just probably planning on driving us back from the movies to save on gas for us. When Thomas said something was his treat, he meant it all the way. And so, in a few minutes, I was in the passenger seat of Lawrence's dirty pickup truck with my kids and wife in the back. Right as we were pulling into the theater parking lot, however, Lawrence's phone dinged. The message was from Thomas. Lawrence showed me and read the message aloud. Thomas had told Lawrence in a rather vague way that plans had changed, and that he wanted Lawrence to bring us to his second family. For the first time since he had opened the apartment door, Lawrence gave us an excited grin and quickly reversed the pickup truck, eagerly getting us back onto the main roads. As I began to ask questions regarding this second family, Lawrence swerved onto a road I had never used before. From what I could gather, Lawrence and Thomas referred to a very close friend group that they had associated within the last year as their second family, and that they all had been looking forward to sharing their first Thanksgiving. Now, it appeared that Thomas wanted my family to join them for dinner. Lawrence turned onto an isolated dirt road that led to a curious concrete structure in the back country. Lawrence parked the car near the front of the building that looked so much like a mausoleum and led us through the entrance. Inside, the building was comprised of many long, dark, intertwining halls that somebody could very easily get lost in. Luckily, Lawrence seemed to know where he was going quite well. He opened one of the doors in the left hallway, revealing a room filled with many other adult men and women. He sat at an almost comically long table lit solely by candles. Upon seeing Lawrence, they all excitedly stood up and praised him for bringing outsiders to the dinner, to which he responded they would need to start without Thomas, as he was running late on some errands. Feeling silly, intrusive, and most certainly confused at the term outsiders, as well as the rest of whatever the hell was going on, it took only a few seconds before I decidedly excused myself and my family. Lawrence looked distressed for a few moments after I had said that, and immediately began to protest, but the others swiftly quieted him, claiming they had no time to argue as the dinner was close to beginning. Even as we walked out and closed the door, Lawrence looked oddly agitated. We wandered through the building's darkened corridors for the better part of an hour, waiting until Lawrence or Thomas came along to take us home, but it never happened. Eventually, we meandered back to the door where the dinner was being held to tell Lawrence we were ready to go home. Before we stepped inside, however, we noticed that the door had a strange symbol on it. Apparently, one of the people inside had come outside undetected at some point and drawn on the door with some chalk, because there was now a crude, cartoonish caricature of a turkey on the door. But something seemed wrong about the drawing. Ominously, it definitely seemed to be more symbolic than playful. Rather than a cute or hilarious drawing of a turkey, the bird had been drawn with twisting, almost sadistic-looking feathers extending from its horrible, fleshy body. The head was drawn to look like a dagger-shaped protrusion of a disgusting neck. As I cautiously reached for the doorknob, my hand wavered. My family exchanged a few worrisome glances before I looked back to the door and turned the knob, opening the door, and they had all finished their Thanksgiving dinner. They had all finished eating a Thanksgiving dinner that was not made of turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. When the police finally arrived, they looked just as disgusted as us at the sight of the mangled corpses. Pieces of them were strewn off of the bodies, or just simply gone, eaten by one of the others or by themselves. Lawrence was one of the corpses, though. We almost didn't recognize him. A few hours later, my traumatized family sat near me in the police station's main office. The police had also contacted Thomas, who now sat next to us as well, looking thoroughly perturbed and ill at the news. We weren't able to give much to the police, but surprisingly, they were able to tell us a lot. Apparently, we had stumbled onto one of the many sects of the second family in America. For years, this had been a problem on Thanksgiving. While everyone was safely locked in their homes, enjoying a meal with their family, only the government and a few other officials were aware of the widespread problem raging in lone, unnoticed concrete structures that lay on the outskirts of many towns and cities. My family and I agreed to no longer observe the holiday without even exchanging words. We all knew that we wouldn't be able to enjoy it now that we had the knowledge of this thing. But the worst part didn't occur until a few days after Thanksgiving. I had finally recuperated enough to put on my heavy winter jacket and drive on down to Thomas's apartment. After arriving, I stepped out and slowly trudged my way up to the apartment door, facing down the whole time. I finally raised my reddened face to knock on the door. I stopped, freezing in that position. Right there, on my front door, written clearly in chalk, a demented turkey-like symbol greeted me. We never really had an extended family with which to celebrate holidays. As such, our holidays were spent at our house comprised of me, my wife, and our 2 girls. We both had extended family, but neither me or my wife kept in touch with our respective kin. Earlier this week, we received a letter from my wife's great uncle. According to him, his father, my wife's grandfather, had passed away. Because the unfortunate death basically coincided with Thanksgiving, we were invited to his ranch house about 3 hours away to celebrate the holiday and pay any respects we might want to pay. After some discussion, we decided we would attend the funeral and the Thanksgiving feast the next night. Since all we had planned this year was the same as the last, however many, just our small family at the house, we thought it might be nice to do something different for a change. We set out yesterday morning and made it to our hotel at about 2 a.m. We spent most of the day hanging out in the hotel, then made the half-hour drive to our uncle's house, where the wake was set up. We thought it was odd that the wake was at his residence, but they were strange people. According to my wife, really, the only reason she agreed to go was because she vaguely remembered spending time with her grandfather when she was much younger and wanted to pay her respects. We showed up to the house and there was an awkwardness in the air that it was almost palpable. I got the idea that none of the people here saw very much of each other. The kids, however, all got along immediately. Our daughters were 5 and 7, and there were kids older, younger, and the same age as them all over the place, and they all got along like they had been friends for years. We went into the house, which was full of kids running around and adults taking advantage of the full bar that had been provided. Random, tense small talk was made, and then the double door to the den opened, where the casket was and the viewing was held. We went through the motions of paying respects, then listened to a priest say his piece about the man, and once it was all done, there was a little more awkward chatting, and we were on our way back to the hotel. The rest of the night went without incident, and this afternoon we headed back to my wife's uncle's house for Thanksgiving dinner. As soon as we got there, I noticed a different kind of atmosphere. It was much quieter than the previous night. Her uncle, who had been kind of secluded the night before, hanging out in the corner and allowing his guests to do as they please, was this time greeted each and every one of us and welcomed us back into his home. He was a bit of a strange man, I thought. Something about him just didn't seem quite right. I thought maybe he seemed too happy that his father had just passed, but far be it from me to judge someone else. We all grieve in our own ways. After a while of uncomfortable reintroductions and unwanted chit-chat with long-lost relatives, we were called to sit down for dinner. Her uncle gave a nice speech honoring his father and said he had a great surprise following dinner that would help us pay all of our final respects. We did a toast to reuniting with lost family, her grandfather, and the rest of the family who had passed in recent years and past. Then the food was brought out. There were the mainstays of mashed potatoes and gravy, stuffing, cranberry sauce, etc. The turkey was brought out pre-sliced and served by her uncle himself. We all ate, and the whole time I got the weirdest vibe from her uncle. He seemed more preoccupied with everyone else eating than he did with himself. More so than any host should be, at least. Towards the end of the meal, he began to laugh. It started with a chuckle, then gradually changed into a laugh, then finally graduated into a boisterous howl. It was very unsettling, to say the least. Everyone around the table went silent. Her uncle stood up and slammed his fist down on the table. He began mumbling to himself, while we all looked at each other, unsure of what was even happening. Then, he suddenly stopped and started walking around the table, brushing his fingers against everyone as he spoke. "You come here, you drink his drinks, eat his food. You haven't even seen him in ages. You never wondered about his well-being. You never checked on him when he was sick. You never stopped by to see if we needed help. You're all pieces of shit, all of you. He had one final request before his unfortunate death. He wanted each of you to leave his home one last time with a piece of him, and it looks like some of you took a few pieces." The realization was harrowing. Many people began throwing up while her uncle walked back into the kitchen, then came back, dragging the one-legged, no-armed, filleted, torsoed corpse of my wife's grandfather behind him, leaving a bloody-ass trail. He heaved what was left of his lifeless body onto the table to a reaction of screams. Our main concern was getting our children out of there, but we found the front door to be locked from the inside, but with a key needed to open it. Everyone began screaming to get the door open, and I was the one at it, helpless. The windows were all barred, something we didn't notice the night before. Before I noticed him get there, her uncle was in the middle of the staircase. He spoke again. "I'm going to let you out, guys. Don't worry. I just figured this might be the last time this much of the family was all together at once. Why don't we go around saying what we're all thankful for? I'll start. I'm thankful for being given the opportunity to supply my estranged family with a memory they'll never forget." He then resumed his boisterous laugh and tossed a key down the stairs onto the ground. He then walked upstairs as we scrambled for the key and unlocked the door. On the way out to the car, we heard what was certainly a shotgun blast come from the house. We all got in the car, and I tried to talk to my wife about what had just happened to figure out what our next move was, without scarring the children, of course. We decided a trip to the hospital would be best, and we've been sitting here waiting to get checked out. And it looks like we're getting called here now, so that's perfect timing. I have to go now. If you get an odd request for a gathering from a estranged family, maybe do a little research first, because I didn't, and now I'm technically a cannibal. Happy holidays. Thanks for watching, Wolfpack. If you want to catch me by the fire next time, I upload every weekend including Friday. Don't forget to like the video as it helps me out more than you know. If you want to submit your story, head down to the description. Now, here's Roken to howl you off to sleep. Have beautiful nightmares.